All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever wondered what happens when a single wrongful act creates not one, but two huge legal problems? We're about to unpack a fascinating legal case from the Philippines that shines the light on a powerful tool for justice you've probably never even heard of.
So, this is the big question we're tackling today. And trust me, the answer might actually surprise you. It really forces us to look at how the law juggles a single event that causes harm to society as a whole, but also a very personal injury to an individual. Think about it like this. After one single wrongful act, it's like two different trains leave the station. The criminal case, that's the heavy freight train. It's slow, it's powerful, and it's focused on punishment on behalf of the state. But the civil case, that's the express train, and its only goal is to get compensation to the victim as fast as possible.
So, what's crucial to understand here is that a crime against society and a personal wrong against a victim are handled on two totally separate legal tracks. The criminal case is all about punishment, upholding the law for everyone. The civil case, that's about making the victim whole again, usually with money. But what happens when one of those trains tries to slam the brakes on the other one?
All right, let's see how this plays out in a real-world context with our main story, the case of Rafael Consing Jr. This is a guy who found himself facing legal battles on both of these tracks at the exact same time.
So Consing was accused of Estafa, which, by the way, is a specific kind of financial fraud. That accusation set that big, heavy criminal freight train in motion. But at the same time, the victim, a company called Unicapital, sent their civil express train barreling right after him, demanding millions. He was caught in a serious legal crossfire.
So what does Consing do? He comes up with a pretty clever strategy. Try to stop that criminal freight train dead in its tracks. He hoped that if he could just pause the criminal case, the civil cases would eventually prove he was innocent. But what legal argument could he possibly use to do that?
Well, he didn't just ask for a simple delay. He used a very specific legal argument, something called a prejudicial question. You can think of it as a very particular kind of legal emergency brake.
This is the exact question he put before the courts. His whole argument was, look, my innocence in the criminal fraud case depends entirely on what happens in my civil case where I'm arguing I was just an agent for my mother. You have to decide that first.
So essentially, his logic was, if the civil court agrees I was just an agent, then there's no way I can be guilty of criminal fraud. So the criminal case has to wait. It seems to make sense on the surface, doesn't it? But, well, the courts had a completely different take on it.
This was a big deal because it went all the way up to the Supreme Court of the Philippines, and their decision was crystal clear. It really revealed this powerful legal principle that acts like an express lane for justice, designed to prevent exactly these kinds of delays.
So, in plain English, nope, the Supreme Court shut it down. They ruled that a civil case for fraud cannot stop a criminal case. And the reason why is fascinating. It's because the law itself has built a special, protected track for certain civil lawsuits. That civil express train gets to keep right on moving.
And what's really cool here is that this wasn't just some random opinion. The court didn't just make a judgment call. They pointed to one specific, incredibly powerful provision in the law that served as the ultimate trump card.
And here it is, the hero of our story, Article 33 of the Civil Code. This is that legal express lane we've been talking about. This is the very tool that keeps the wheels of civil justice turning for victims.
So what Article 33 does is it basically creates this protected, high-speed track for victims of very specific wrongs. We're talking defamation, fraud, like in Consing's case, and physical injuries. For these situations, the civil lawsuit is entirely separate and distinct. It can't be delayed or stopped by that slow criminal freight train. It just gets to go, no permission needed.
Okay, so what does all this mean for the average person? Why should you care about this rule? Well, it all boils down to one huge difference between the two types of cases.
And that huge difference, it's the burden of proof. Think about it. For a criminal conviction, the state has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a super high bar to clear. But for an Article 33 civil case, all a victim needs is a preponderance of evidence. That just means they have to show their claim is more likely true than not. Way easier to prove, right?
And this is an absolute game changer for victims. First, it means you can get compensation much, much faster. Second, the hurdle is just way lower. And here's the kicker. Step 3. Even if the accused gets acquitted in the criminal trial, the victim can still go on to win their separate civil case. It's a vital second chance at justice. So the bottom line is this.
Article 33 makes sure a victim's right to get compensated isn't held hostage by the criminal justice system, which, let's face it, can be incredibly slow and really demanding. It gives victims back a measure of control over their own path to justice.
And that brings us to one last really big question to chew on. If this legal express lane is so powerful and so effective for victims of defamation, fraud, and physical injuries, should we expand it? Are there other wrongs out there that deserve the same kind of protection? It's definitely something to think about.